Hey, welcome. Today we are looking at the concept of evolution in cybersecurity. This idea is not new. Effective cybersecurity, it's always been a process, a continual evolution, continually improving. But this moment that we're in is uniquely challenging. You see, AI has introduced new challenges, new risks, and attackers have resources available to them at a scale that we haven't seen before. You see, we're at an inflection point, and security must evolve. Before we dive into that, though, just a quick introduction. My name is Stephen Lauber. I'm the CEO at Trailhead. We are a managed intelligence partner, and the way I like to describe that makes sense is that we are technology guides for businesses. We help them use cloud and AI tools in safe and smart ways. So that's what we do at Trailhead. Here's a little bit more about me on this page, but let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to walk through what we're going to talk about today in this session, and we're going to spend a little time exploring this idea of extinction versus evolution, and then talk about some of the top cybersecurity threats that we see today and the impact that they have on your business. And then we'll pivot to talking about what cyber readiness can look like and help you start building an evolution blueprint. So the idea here is that we're going to be on a journey from awareness to action. So I want you to imagine this. Say your business, you're standing at a crossroads. You got one path that's going to stick to outdated methods, hoping that things just stay the same. And then the other is embracing change, focuses on growth and value safety. Which path are you going to choose? In today's fast-moving world where cyber threats are constantly evolving, standing still is going to lead to extinction. To thrive, you need agility and you need a mindset that's built for change. Evolution isn't a buzzword. It's your strategy for lasting security and a sharper competitive edge. So you need to know what you're up against if you want to build effective defenses. So let's look at some of these top cybersecurity threats that we see today. And the top of this list is ransomware. This is no stranger. Ransomware has been on the top of our threat list for a long time. But what we are seeing now is that AI has really reinvigorated ransomware, and attackers now are using artificial intelligence to launch faster and more targeted attacks. And these threats bypass traditional defenses, and they are locking down critical data with alarming precision. The next is advanced persistent threats, or APTs. And just put simply, this is when a highly skilled attacker is able to infiltrate systems in quiet ways, and they can stay hidden for long periods of time and extract sensitive data without any alerts being generated or alarms going off. They often can stay undetected for weeks or months or more, because they have bypassed that initial line of defense. But then there isn't a mechanism monitor looking for those type of threats. When we talk about supply chain attacks, today we are so interdependent upon other organizations, vendors or your partners, other organizations to deliver our services, to run our businesses. And so an attack against one of those partners, one of those vendors, one of those third-party organizations in our supply chain can have an indirect negative impact on us. So you need to be evaluating your entire supply chain for potential threats that might not be directly against you. And data breaches. What I want you to think about here are things that go beyond just the traditional firewall that we may have put around our office, right? We put these perimeter defenses, try to block the attacks that are coming up against us. Because now our perimeters of most organizations are spread all over the place. We've got people working in various locations, working all over the place. We have put data and information into systems in the cloud outside of that that neat, tidy perimeter that we had maybe defined with our firewalls. But also don't neglect the human element here. Oftentimes breaches and most often times breaches are initiated by one of your employees kind of taking an action and inviting an attacker right in past a number of these perimeter defenses. When we talk about IoT exploits, we're talking about all of these devices now that are connected to the internet. It seems like almost everything wants an internet connection. Maybe it's an HVAC system, might be a light bulb. I mean, everything seems to have a connection to the internet. And so often these are neglected because they're not the traditional type of computer system that you are used to protecting. So they might be maybe going unpatched or just have vulnerabilities that haven't been addressed, or just we've expanded that attack surface way beyond just that traditional computers that we're used to doing or used to protecting. Okay, with deepfake and social engineering attacks, I want to show you an example here. This is a story. Some of you may have seen this. This was a company, Arup, a British company based in Hong Kong. They lost $25 million in a fraudulent wire transfer situation. The wire transfers, fraudulent wire transfers are nothing new. That's a pretty common attack mechanism. But in this case, the senior financial employee received a wire transfer request, but what was unusual here was that request included a link to jump onto a Zoom call with the CFO and a couple other employees of the company. But when they were on that Zoom call, these were not the actual CFO and other employees. These were really highly realistic video and audio generated with AI, enough to convince that financial officer to take action. They went through and made 15 transfers to 5 different Hong Kong bank accounts before they realized this was a scam. I mean, so this is an example of what we were talking about earlier, how AI has really kind of changed the landscape or the capabilities of these attackers to really deliver incredibly effective attacks. Okay, and then the last one here is cloud misconfigurations. We often see businesses when they've moved a workload to the cloud, maybe it's a business process, a line of business app, they'll move that to a cloud vendor and assume that that vendor is now responsible for everything, the delivering that product as well as the security and risk around that. And they will often miss some maybe simple setup mistakes in configuration or unauthorized access or something that either they're responsible for and don't realize, or just maybe missed because they are kind of giving up a lot of, or they think they are giving up a lot of that responsibility. I can't stress enough that you really need to make sure you understand your risk, your exposure when you do move things to the cloud. Tremendous benefits from a functionality, productivity, reliability standpoint, but you aren't always giving up. In fact, you're very rarely transferring all of your risk there. All right, so just some of the threats I really need to make sure you guys understand here that we need to evolve our responses to these threats. So now that we've seen kind of what's out there, let's take a look at what can happen to your business, what some of the business impact is by some of these threats. I mean, every threat's going to come with a cost, but here's what you risk if you're not acting. And first, let's look at downtime. I mean, when systems go offline, operations stall, customers lose access. I mean, every minute of disruption is going to cost you revenue, could be eroding trust. And this and it isn't just always the things that you have direct control over. Let's think about AWS. I mean, just this past week, AWS had a really significant outage, cost a downtime impact for many, many systems across the internet. So you may be having impact from downtime for systems that you aren't directly responsible for. So you need to be thinking about that as well when you're looking at potential downtime issues. Data loss. I mean, losing customer records and financial data or proprietary information can really incapacitate your operations. So maybe weak backup systems or recovery processes that are just too slow or impossible can have a huge impact when we're talking about data loss. Okay, so let's look at reputational damage now. I mean, any breach is going to shake client and partner confidence. And you may have a cyber liability insurance policy that's going to help offset some of the cost, the financial aspect of recovery and restoration. But you're still going to need to rebuild that trust that's been lost. And that's going to take time, effort, and resources that the financial elements of an insurance policy may not help with. And lastly, we have here regulatory fines. So poor data handling might lead to some penalties and compliance issues, things that you may not even be thinking about. You may have obligations, commitments that you've made that you may have to be managing. You may have some legal fallout while you're restoring operations. Okay, so the good news is you don't need perfection here. What you need is a strategy that's going to help you bounce back and bounce back stronger and quickly. Here's what future ready security looks like. So let's start with zero trust. So zero trust here is really a mindset, a philosophy that needs to kind of go across all of your entire security program. We're talking about every user and every device and connection or application that you allow. It's got to prove its legitimacy before access is granted. So trust has got to be earned, not assumed. And this is not a one product type of a solution here. This is really, like I said, a mindset. You got to take this philosophy and use this to evaluate the effectiveness of your entire security program. Next, let's use AI to your benefit, right? We've shown you some ways that the bad guys are leveraging AI against you. You need to make sure that you are using AI for your own defense. Things like machine learning tools that can detect threats faster than a human can, or automated responses. So if you're not directly involved in IT, ask the folks. Sit down with your team or your vendor that's managing the IT for you and ask them some questions. How are they using AI today? How are they augmenting their defenses that are protecting you? How are they leveraging AI for that? Then a cyber-aware culture. You need your teams to treat security really as a shared responsibility so that they can act quickly when these warning signs pop up. Proper training. This is really something that goes beyond just the IT department. This is not just the responsibility of IT. Your cybersecurity is really a function and a responsibility of everybody. So you want a culture of cyber awareness. And then let's focus on resilience over perfection, right? I mean, we're never going to be able to prevent every potential threat, block every possible breach. So you need to focus on resilience. An approach I like to recommend is to assume a breach. Let's not discount or belittle our protections, but take the approach that we're going to assume something bad is going to happen and figure out how do we best respond to it? What can we do to be resilient and recover from things quickly, fast, and effectively? And then we had talked about supply chain a little bit earlier, but make sure that all of your third parties are going through some sort of vetting process. Make sure that's part of your risk profile. Make sure you understand what they are doing from security because that's going to have a direct impact on you. Okay, so now we know what future ready looks like. Let's help you build a blueprint for this. The first steps here in building this blueprint is risk awareness. And so we've spent a lot of time already talking about what's at stake here, your data and systems and your reputation, but we need to also identify the threats the threats that are most likely to land, which ones could hit and have the biggest impact to you. And to do that, you really need to start with an inventory. So I like to recommend businesses take an inventory of all of their processes, systems, beyond just the traditional IT systems. Well, look at workflows, deliverables, processes that you are doing in your organization where a loss, an attack could have a negative impact. And then prioritize those. Which ones would have the biggest impact? Which ones have the highest risk? Maybe they've got vulnerabilities that stand out. And that will help you kind of pinpoint where you got to start first in building your protections. And then as you're building these preventions and protections, make sure you have a layered approach, not just one solution or a firewall and an antivirus program. Make sure the protections have layers so that if one of these layers is compromised, your entire security program doesn't collapse. And let's focus on our people and our culture. Make sure you're training your team to spot phishing attempts and social engineering attacks and the evolving ways that attackers are using AI, like we showed you in that example of the deepfake scam. And you want to build that culture where security just becomes second nature, and then the accountability is shared. Make it part of your onboarding process and then reinforce it through ongoing education, not just a one-time sort of training process. It's got to be ongoing. And also have detection and monitoring. Real critical here. You want to make sure we've got systems that are constantly looking for anything unusual, being able to kind of see what does normal look like, and then have threat detection processes that can detect when something abnormal happens and catch that early. And with response and recovery, let's make sure you've got incident response plans that address those highest risk areas that you've already identified, and take those. So I would recommend just starting with the most impactful areas. Pick out one or two of those, build a response plan around that, because this might be well beyond just restoring data from a server that dies. You want to focus on what's our response if we lose access to a critical process. What does that look like? Does everybody understand what their responsibilities and their roles are in this plan? And then test it. Use a tabletop exercise for this. These are great ways to even build a plan, but get everybody together. Walk through these scenarios step by step. You don't have to be in the actual event, don't have to be in the thick of it. Take time just to walk through these things in a scenario where it's a little more safe, everybody's not panicked, and you can figure out, do we have everything accounted for? Do we miss something? What can we do to improve? And take the opportunity to enhance things, fix those. These need to be living, breathing processes. Can't be something that sits up on a shelf and then gets pulled out when the event happens and everybody's panicked. You want to walk through these things in a safe place and then make improvements to it. I recommend doing tabletop exercises, annually at minimum, but then make sure part of that process is to review that and improve it. Find out what did we miss and adjust the plan. And then if you do have an event, if there is something where you've lost access to something and you have to pull that response plan out, once things have settled down and it's been resolved, take some time after everybody's caught their breath, then go back and evaluate, hey, what worked in that process? Was the plan correct? Did we miss anything? What can we do to improve for the next times? You want this to be a constant, always improving process. But the good news is you don't have to do this alone. At Trella, this is what we do. We walk alongside businesses, guide them through these cyber readiness journeys all the time. Here's some examples of what that can look like. Oftentimes, a good logical first step is a risk assessment. Maybe take an assessment, identify any vulnerabilities or blind spots in an existing cybersecurity program, give you some action items to help you shore that up. Or maybe it's helping you develop some better employee security training programs. really strengthen that human firewall that we talked about earlier with some engaging simulations or an ongoing training program, or maybe modernizing some outdated technology. Help you build a plan to move to more efficient cloud or AI type of solutions for you. So really what it's all about is being a trusted guide for you, providing you with some expert advice and a plan to help you all the way along that journey. So if you're ready to move from reactive to proactive, we'd love to help out with that. The next couple of slides will show you some ways that you could start that. This presentation that we did today is part of our October Cybersecurity Awareness Month program. We have some events that we've had throughout the month. Still have some yet to come. We also have some recordings of previous events. So you could head to our Cybersecurity Awareness Month page with this QR code where you could register for upcoming events, watching the recordings, also take advantage of some of the resources that we have there on that page. But to wrap this up, I mean, we've shown you the blueprint. So now it's time for you to take some action with your cyber readiness. If you would like some help along that journey, I'd love to have a conversation. You can go to our website here, scan this QR code. We'll give you some ways to kind of get started with that. I'd love to help you out if you're looking for that. So thank you, everybody. I appreciate your time. Thank you for joining me today. Go out and make it a great rest of your day.